Drone technology has advanced at a lightning pace in the Ukraine war. But what I think is most interesting is the one area we haven't seen drone innovation is on the ground. We've seen naval drones, airborne drones, and finally, Ukraine has rolled out its ground combat drones. Just what can these things do? Are they the first iteration of the Terminator? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's take a look at what Ukraine can do. Okay, so this is fairly recent. I'm trying to see. So you can see that this drone looks pretty simple. It looks just like 4 wheels and a chassis. I think it likely has a control device, right? Probably an antenna and some level of camera to at least see its environment. Again, these are things that most of these airborne drones have. And, what I think is interesting is that both naval and air drones, the reason they've shown up first, right, and ground drones are showing up much later, is that the ground is just one of the most difficult pieces, one of most difficult environments to navigate. And think about it, right? If you're going to swim across a bay, right? You and I don't know. Even if I just said a bay, right? Like a random bay, you can know, no matter what part of the globe you're in, that bay is basically going to be all water. You're going to start at one shore, you're going to swim until you reach the other shore, and the water is going to be the same consistency, right? Maybe some bays would be a little colder, some bays would be a little warmer, but you pretty much know the environment you're going to be operating in, right? And the same thing applies to the air, right? If I told you I'm going to take a flight, you don't even need to know the starting and ending point because you know that, again, other than some minor variations in air temperature and possibly some air currents, you're basically moving through a consistent, predictable environment. And that's the thing. The environment is very easy to predict. The ground, not so much. If I tell you I'm going for a walk, or I want you to move by foot from point A to point B, well, that could range from literally a jaunt on a sidewalk from your apartment to your local, bodega or your local deli, which can be done by, someone who's even like mobility impaired. But that could also range from a brutal hike up a mountain, right? Going for a walk is everything from extreme alpine summiting Everest to taking a walk around a paved trail in a park. And the problem is that when you have a drone like this, it's got to be smart enough to conduct that navigation effectively, right? Even if the terrain is rougher or more obstacle-filled than you might predict. So let's take a look at how this operates, right? It's obviously got these all-terrain tires, and you can see here, right, as we've talked about frequently, Ukraine is kind of defined by these agrarian environments, these agrarian battle spaces, where the terrain is as close to perfect as you can get, right? It's flat, it's open, it's very navigable, right? You can see that even like a large shell trench isn't going to be affected by this. And what I find also pretty interesting is that these tires very narrow, and you notice the chassis is elevated from the ground. I think that high level of clearance both allows it to navigate some little bumps in the terrain, but I suspect that it's also to minimize the total surface area in contact with the ground to avoid setting off anti-personnel mines. Now, this looks a little too light to set off an anti-tank mine, which is not an accident, right? The ability to deliver this kind of explosive onto the battlefield is pretty substantial. And what I think, actually, I look at this, and purportedly the Ukrainians are using this to actually target a bridge, Russian bridging site. But I look at this and I think mine clearing, right? Especially if the drone could be programmed. Oh, you see here, it's doing what looks like a UXO function. Oh, no, it detected it. It detected a threat. Oh, that's cool. It saw, so to speak, the unexploded ordnance, right? And it was like, hey, I've got to navigate around this. That's pretty smart. That is pretty smart, right? But you see the challenges, right? Even if that drone had a perfect map of the route it was going to take, even if it had driven the route before, it still wouldn't be able to anticipate an unexploded ordnance arriving on the battlefield. So the fact that it could navigate this is pretty impressive. And it seems like it must have a pretty precise GPS tracker because it seems to be moving like this, and being able to talk via GPS is pretty much a tremendous difference maker. So you see here, it's navigating to a certain point, to a culvert. Oh, I see what it's doing. It's meant to impede the Russian ability to move across this battle space, right? So this is likely a route of a Russian attack, and they may try to either weaken the road or destroy it so that when the Russian attack arrives, the tanks have to sit here and figure out how to turn around, right? And that takes a while. And while they're stuck in place, likely Ukrainian artillery will start to drop ordnance onto them. That's what I suspect we're seeing here. Okay, let's see. So I've got to fast forward just a smidge, but you can imagine what happens when the drone laden with explosives transits under the culvert. It detonates and disables the roadway. And you can see here is a Ukrainian soldier providing us, recovered drone footage. Okay. And they were able to recover the drone footage. That is really fascinating. Again, does this drone seem like it's ready for prime time, like all sorts of different military terrains all over the place? No, not really. But it is a first step, just like the World War I tanks, right? They were rudimentary. They were meant to cross exactly this kind of terrain. Open terrain, very predictable, very a little variation among them. And I think that's what we're seeing here, right? And now imagine if you were an infantry squad and you had something like that, maybe 10, 15% bigger, right? Large enough that it could provide cover. It was armored. It could seek and engage targets, automatically via screen. That could be a pretty incredible piece of technology. And this, I think, is the initial pioneering of that tech. So again, this is not a game changer, but I think it is the start of a game-changing potential piece of technology. Anyway, guys, if you are interested in seeing uncensored combat footage, including my analysis of the plain-clothed Israeli Special Forces unit raiding a hospital, that is available on combatvetnews.com for members. If you want to support the channel, keep me independent. You know, a lot of sponsors do not want to touch war content. So if you want to keep me able to do this, any one of these tiers will get you access to Combat Vet News. And twice a week, I find the uncensored combat footage going viral on the internet, and I do a deep dive analysis. We watch it and we analyze it. So thank you to our Colonel tier members, to our Lieutenant tier members of Combat Vet News, and to all the members of Combat Vet News. I couldn't do it without you guys. Thank you so much. See you in the next one. Cheers.